Hi everyone, it's Bree, the owner of Itty Bitty Berry, and we're going to be doing a market vlog. So I'm going to pass it over to Bree at the market and she's going to tell you what's going on. So I have a moment now. We are over an hour in and we're sitting at over $300, so we're doing really good. Let me see if I can get a video of the booth. Okay. Hour 2 has passed and we're over 500. It is now 4 and we're almost at 700, and I will show you the booth. I'm back and let's get into the market recap. So this was the Japanese Cherry Blossom Festival and it was from 12 to 6, so more of like an afternoon market. I'm usually doing them in the morning, but this one was a nice change for the afternoon. And let's see, it was a 6-foot table space for $100. And this was just like an event, like I said, it's a Japanese Cherry Blossom Festival, so there was a lot of anime stuff going on. A lot of the tables had a lot of anime stuff, but there was also things like they had a kimono seller, they had like a Japanese tea serving ceremony, so they had all kinds of really cool stuff going on and things like that. So I started making sales really early. This was my first time doing this event. I have attended this event before, but like as a patron, I guess you would call it. But this was my first time vending. So I started making sales, I think at like 11:30. I don't know if that was other vendors or volunteers. I think there might have been some people there early because they had like karate, like kids who do karate did like a performance. There was some kids who were in a choir who did a performance, so I don't know if they were there early too, because there was a fairly decent amount of people walking around before 12. And this was indoor, not outdoor. The only things outdoors was all the food. All the vendors and demonstrations and stuff was inside. So next time, because I will do this event again, this was really fun for me. I did good. I liked it a lot. But next time I think I'm going to come even earlier to set up. I was almost done setting up by 11:30. We got there around 10 and it took me a while to find my booth, but eventually I found it. They had the tables out with stickers on them with your name, but I ended up having to find somebody for help. But I did find my table after a while, and then we were pretty much set up by 11:30. I was just doing a few things here and there. So next time I think I want to get there a little earlier just because I was making sales so early. So let me pull up my Square sales report and we will get into all the details. Okay, I got my sales report up and it's over here on my computer, so I'll be looking down a lot and that's why. But besides just getting into the sales, I want to talk a little bit more about the market. I'm going to be inserting some pictures, just a few. One was for my lunch / dinner, because like I said, it went into later. I got this really good sushi taco. At first I was like, what is that? But I think because it was like in a market event and it was outside, like the food was outside, a lot of people at the food were having trouble because it was windy that day and their stuff was flying everywhere. So instead of just giving people like a plate of sushi, which would be kind of hard to eat at like a market event, it was like sushi, but they took the seaweed wrap and like made it in the shape of a taco, and then it had the rice. I think it had crab, avocado, some of the sauces and stuff, but it was really good. So I'm going to insert a picture of that. Oh. And then I got to take one picture of cosplayers. It was a Dobby and Shiggy. They came around a little later in the afternoon when it was more quiet, so I could take a picture of them. And then their cosplays looked really good and they were super sweet, super nice. Oh, I also got to take a picture of a Misa from Death Note. She was super cute, super sweet. Some other cosplays I wanted to get pictures of but couldn't because it was just so busy. In the first few hours, it was crazy. But there was a Kane from the Amazing Digital Circus. He had the whole head and everything. And there was also a Sun from Five Nights at Freddy's. They had the mask and they had these really cute crayon pants. I loved the crayon pants. Being a teacher, I was like, I need those. So... oh, let's also get into the shopping that I did, some of the looking around and doing stuff. I was a little disappointed, and this is not marketed as like a small business event at all. It's just, so there was a lot of resellers, and at first I was nervous. I was like, are my plushies even gonna sell against these like Temu resell plushies? But I actually did really good. I was excited about that. And maybe people were realizing, they were like, oh, I don't want to buy all the resale stuff, because there was a lot of it. I think there was one artist, like drawing artist. I know there was a girl who made origami like jewelry, which was really cool. She made teeny tiny cranes, and then she said she coated them in resin, and some like other ones too, but they were really pretty. There was a wood burning artist. They like burnt drawings into wood. And there was another crochet artist, but she had crochet and then a lot of the other resale stuff. And I want to say that that is all the small businesses that weren't reselling. And there was like 2 hallways of stuff. So that's what I remember anyways. But shopping wise, I didn't buy a whole lot because I don't really want to buy from the resellers and stuff like that. But I did buy... oh, I left my other one. I bought 2 hair sticks. This one is really pretty. It has a light inside, but I'm not going to pull out the little paper because I don't think you can turn it off, and I don't want it to die until I want to wear it. But this one's really pretty. And I got an... you know what? Let me go get my other one. So this is the other one I got. I already broke it. There was another dangly bead. There's hair on it already. Sorry. There was another dangly bead. I did save it so that I can fix it, but it has little flowers on it. Really pretty. I really like hair sticks. These are my like first 2 that I have that are an actual hair stick. Yeah. But of course these were from a reseller, but I did want some pretty hair sticks because like as a teacher I put pencils in my hair all the time. So to have, you know, like a real hair stick and not a pencil is nice. And so I got both of these because I thought they were really pretty. And then I did an art trade with my... oh my gosh, I just realized, I was thinking of like the 2 hallways for all the vendors. I was in a corner, which I also thought was going to impact my sales. I'm like, great, I'm in a corner, nobody's going to see me, because you came in the doors and there was a long hallway in front of you, and then there was another hallway to your side. There was actually 3 hallways, because then you go all the way down to down that one, and there was another hallway. But there was also a door at that corner that you could come in if you were getting food. But then, anyway, at the one, after the 3rd hallway, there was like this little cubby area, and that's where I was. So there was me, another small business girl that was my booth neighbor that I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then there was another small business who did perler beads, and their stuff was really cute. So there was a few more right there. But I thought it was going to impact my sales until I realized we were right beside the gym area where they did the karate demonstrations, singing. There was a drum demonstration. There was a Japanese singer. There was the tea serving ceremonies. So when people were coming out of those events, they were right in our area. And then there was another area where they did other stuff too, but that was on the other side of the building. So that did generate some traffic. But my booth neighbor was Kimchi Moon. And some of the stuff she had was upcycled clothing. So she just, upcycled clothing, I guess. And I had been eyeing some of her Sailor Moon stuff because she had a lot of Sailor Moon stuff. And I had some Sailor Moon plushies too. So we were both eyeing each other's stuff. And then at the end of the market, we were like, you know what? It's meant to be. Let's do an art trade. She was super sweet. I talked to her all day. Loved her. You should definitely go check out her Instagram. But anyway, this is what I got in our art trade. This really cute vest. And it's got, ooh, where did I just see? There's a little bunny right there. Like, kind of like Chibi Usa inspired. And then on the back, it's got like some moons, another bunny, and then there's this Sailor Moon that says, "I wish I could be a cat." It's a little hard to see on camera. It's wrinkly because I threw it in my closet, but yeah, it's really cute. She had a couple other, most of her clothing was Sailor Moon, or she had like the little bunny and moon on it. And then she also had some upcycled keychains where like she bought blind boxes, and then the ones she didn't want, she turned into keychains. She also did like hairpins. I think what she did was she drew on Shrinky Dink stuff and then turned it into things. So she had some barrettes, she had some earrings, and she had a lot of pins. Her pins did really well. So I got the vest, and then I also got, where is it? I put it on here somewhere. Here it is. I got this Cinnarol in a bear outfit. This is kind of like the Mocha Bear themed inspired one. I love Cinnarol, Cinnamoroll, however you want to say it. They are my favorite Sanrio character. So of course I snagged that pin and I just put it on my vest so I knew where it was and it didn't get lost in my bags. But it looks cute on this vest. And then she took my Sailor Moon doll. So she was torn between the Sailor Moon Hello Kitty and then the Sailor Moon, but she eventually went with the Sailor Moon. So that was my art trade. I really like this vest. It's really cute. And of course I love the pin. So now let's actually get into the market breakdown. So let's see. Yep, my first sale was, is this cash? Yeah, cash. It was half cash, half card was how the day went. Very split even. 11:36, I sold two $8 items for $16, and I started writing those down. So that was a Kirby and a Korok. When we were setting up, my sister was like, "What is this?" Holding the Koroks. I'm like, "It's from The Legend of Zelda," and she's like, "Okay, but these are weird. Nobody's gonna know what these are, and nobody's gonna buy them." I'm like, "That's the best. Those are the best games ever. Somebody's gonna know." So of course, first sale, Korok. At 11:37, I had two $10 items and a possum sell. So my $10 items was the Luigi duck and a Mew. At 12, this was my first card transaction. So that was a $10 item and then my card fee for $10.10. So if it has 10 cents on the end, you know that that was a card because it has a card fee on it. So that $10 item was a Spider-Man. Next at 12:01, we had, for $10, we had a Freddy. At 12:11, I had a Gengar and two of my larger Pokemon. I do not remember which two those were. The Pikachu sold last, so I know it wasn't the Pikachu. It was one of the Eevee. It was two of the Eeveelutions. And that was for $42. At 12:12, I sold a No Face for $14. At 12:19, I sold another one of the large Pokemon, so that would have been the last Eeveelution, an $8 item, which was the Mini Yoda, and that was for $24.10. At 12:23, I sold a $5 item. Now, this was, I had no $5 items out on my table. This sold because at some point, my sister, when she was helping me set up, she found a little penguin in my bag that was a $5 item. It was originally a car swing, but it kept tipping over, like it was too big for the swing, so I just cut the swing off. And I was like, okay, I'll just throw this in the $5 bin next time I do a market. Of course, for this event, I didn't do the $5 bin. I did an $8 and a $10. She thought it was really cute. Well, she must have snuck it out on my shelf at some point because a girl came up and she was like, "How much for this cute little penguin?" I'm like, "Oh, it's $5. So that's how a $5 item got sold. At 12:25, for $18, I sold a Jigglypuff and the second Korok. At 12:31, I sold my Drifloon swing for $17.10. At 12:35, I sold Bubble for $20.10. At 12:36, I sold my other Bubble for $17. I had this marked as 20, and this guy really wanted it. Let me see if I can find. I think he bought the Jigglypuff and the Korok. He had bought something before and came back, and he really wanted it, but he didn't have enough cash. I don't think he had enough on card either, and I was like, well, I could do 18 on it. And he counted out his money, and he's like, darn, I only have 17. I was like, you know what, just take it for 17. He had already come by and bought stuff, and, you know, of course, I want to clear out inventory. The bubble was pretty popular. It probably would have sold for $20, but I also don't know how long they take to make me. I don't know how long they take to make. I just threw $20 on them. I mean, it's just a sphere, so I was fine with selling it for $17. And it also, people kept coming back and asking if I still had the bubble, so I think it would have sold for $20, but another reason I sold it for $17 was because I thought it wasn't going to sell at $20, because before the bubbles sold, a lot of people were like, oh, $20, I'm not going to buy it. Oh, $20, I'm not going to buy it. So I thought that $20 was too high. Well, then come around, people bought the bubbles, and then people were still wanting them, so... At 12:30, oh wait, that was the same one. At 12:51, I sold my big Toothless for $55.10. At 12:59, I sold Totoro and Bowser for $27. At 1:09, I sold my Cinnamoroll. At 1:10, I sold a Skunk. So at this point, I started just throwing items out into my $8 and $10 bins that I had left as back stock. I started throwing back stock stuff out because my booth was getting really empty. As you can see, from 11 to 1, it was just boom, boom, boom. It was super busy. It was crowded. Like, people couldn't even get to my table to look. So I think that could have hindered sales. Also, if I would have had more stuff, I probably would have made more because I ran out so quickly. And then my booth, from far away, you could see my big pink thing, and you could kind of just see what was left. Like, there was no need for people to walk over and look. They just felt like they could see it and then just leave if they didn't see something they wanted, because it was down to like 10 items on the shelves. So at 1:11, I sold an Appa for $12. At 1:18, I sold one of my Stress Mushies for $13. At 1:19, I sold one of the Rubber Ducks for $8.10. I did not write down which one it was. I did sell out of all my Rubber Ducks, and I know that the last one to sell was the Gojo Duck. They were really popular. A lot of people really liked them. At 1:20, I sold Chopper for $45.10. At 1:23, I sold 2 ducks for $16.10. At 1:32, I sold a Stress Mushy, I have a really hard time saying that, for $13.10. At 1:32, I sold my Luna Loaf Cat for $12.10. At 12:08, I sold my Minecraft Bee for $208. I sold my Minecraft Bee for $12. So here you can see it really starts slowing down. We went from 132 to 208. There was like a half hour of no sales. Some of the events, I think, were impacting that, because starting at, the event ended at 6, so I think starting at like 4:45, they started the cosplay contest. Once that started, it was completely dead. There was like nobody. So I would really say after the first few hours of the event, people stopped shopping. They came in, they got their shopping done, and then they were on to what events were going on. At 12:13, I sold Pochita for $20. This was really sweet to me. It did not go to this person, it went to somebody else, but there was a younger boy, maybe like 14, 15, and he really liked the Pochita. He really liked it. But I kept hearing him say, but it's $20, it's $20. And I was like, okay, it's one of those people who think crochet is too expensive. But then as he's walking away, he tells his friend, he's like, I'm never going to find anything like that again because it's handmade. I'm never going to see anything like that again. And $20, that's just such a good price. That's such a deal. But he didn't end up buying it. Maybe he didn't quite have $20 because he was pretty young. But that was really sweet to me that a young kid like that understood the value of handmade. At 2:18, I sold a mini cow for $10. At 12:19, I sold 2 $10 items, so that was the Chomp Chomp and the Bomb. At 2:22, I sold Appa for $12. At 12:42, I sold a possum for $15. So the possums, I had one, and I put the one out because this was a new pattern for me to see if it would sell. and if it would sell at $15. Of course, it was like one of the first sales, as you've seen. So I had yarn to continue making possums, so I made another one, threw it out, it sold. I think I have one more that I did, and then I ran out of stuffing. At $2.44, I sold one of my finger puppet bunnies for $7.10. At $2.45, I sold the Pom Pom Purin. At $2.58, I sold my last duck for $8, so that would have been the Gojo duck. At $3.01, I sold Derpy for $15. At $3.10, I sold my next possum for $10. At $3.14, I sold my Hello Kitty. That doesn't make sense, because Hello Kitty is $10. I'm going to assume that I messed up the order when I was writing them down. So I think that must have been $8. I think it would have been my seahorse. That's the last $8 item I have on the list. We'll see if another one pops up, then we'll know that I have no idea what I sold. But that was for $8.10. At $3.37, I sold one of my fruit spiders for $13.10. So I had an eggplant and a pear left, and I threw those out on the table because I threw the stress mushies out first in place of the no face, and they sold. So then I put out my fruit spiders. As soon as I put those out, almost everybody who walked by had to point them out and talk about them. They were a really good attention getter, and I realized with my fruit spiders I should have been displaying them differently at markets this whole time, because I was displaying them like in a basket tipped sideways, and then I'd stack them inside, so you couldn't really see their fruit butts. You could only see the spider part. But when the whole spider was being able to be seen, it got a lot more attention. So I think next time I need to display my fruit spiders completely differently when I do markets. But like I said, everybody was commenting on them, because you either like spiders or you don't. And if you don't, you're like, oh, a spider. And a lot of people were like that. They were like, haha, mom, look, a spider. Oh, and they were like, oh, a spider. But then people are like, oh, it's actually a cute spider because it's a plushie, it's not scary. Or I've learned selling fruit spiders, a lot of people have pet jumping spiders. And then also, once people were like, oh, a spider, and then they noticed the fruit butt, they were more into it. It was more conversation. They were a big attention getter. I really learned that those need to be displayed differently, because like I said, everybody who walked by was looking at those. At $3.43, I sold Hello Kitty at $3.40 for $10. At $3.48, I sold Mewtwo for $10.10. At $3.48, I sold my other fruit spider for $13. At $3.55, I sold Luffy for $22.10. At $3.57, I sold another $8 for $8.10. So yeah, I don't know what I sold in between there. Did I say that I sold a skunk? Because a skunk was in the $8 bin. Somewhere I have written down that I sold a skunk. A skunk was on the $8 bin. $3.57, I sold a large Pokemon for $16.10, and that was the Pikachu, because he was the last to go. He was sitting there very lonely. As you could see on my list, the Evolution sold really fast, and then Pikachu was all by himself. At $4.07, I sold my Stitch Boba for $30.10. At $4.12, I sold another $8 item for $8. Wow, I was really bad at keeping track towards the end of the day, because I don't know what that was. Well, I do know, as some of the stuff I was throwing in the $8 bin was those squishy Octos that when you squish them, the nose blows up. I threw some of those in, and I sold some of those. So some of those $8 items might be those. Other than that, I don't think any of the other $8 items that I threw in there sold. And then at $5.51, I sold an $8 item for $8.10. And that was my last sale of the day. So you can see it got very dead. Like, we went from $4.12 to then $5.51. You can about tell when the cosplay contest started, because people were gone. So at that point, I think I did my shopping, got some food, and then was just chatting with my booth neighbor the rest of the time. So that equaled a total of $745.90. So I think I did pretty good. That is my $100 an hour mark. It would be with my booth fee, it would be $645.90. I think I would have sold a lot more if I had a lot more. Like I said, I ran out pretty early, and people could see with just the 6-foot table setup, you could see what I had, and if you weren't interested, they walked away. So I think that kind of hindered my sales, but I made as much as I could. I did what I could. I'm one person, I'm not a machine, and I have to remember that. So I made a total of 46 transactions. And I know from my market breakdowns, I've been going by what the square says is the 5 top popular items. But we always end up with like the $5 items, the $10 items, the $8 items, you know, things like that. So based on memory, what I'm going to say was popular was definitely the ducks. Definitely the ducks with hats. They all sold pretty quickly. People kept talking about them. People loved them. And then let's see what else was pretty popular. I didn't really make a lot of the same thing. It was kind of just one-off things. The Koroks did pretty good. They sold fast. Of course, any Pokemon I had sold, and people were talking about that. They're like, oh, all your Pokemons are gone already. And I was having people come back and ask if I still had Pokemon. The Mewtwo was the last one to sell, and he was there for quite a while. He was just by himself in the $10 Pokemon basket. I don't know if people didn't notice him because he was by himself, or maybe didn't notice that it was Mewtwo, but in my experience, I feel like Mewtwo is pretty popular, but maybe I'm wrong. But that was the last Pokemon to sell. So I would definitely say my most popular items were the ducks and Pokemon. So that was how my market day went. I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm excited to go back next year, and next year I will definitely try to make more inventory. I was expecting, since this was like more of an anime event, for people to spend more money on the bigger items as you would see at a convention, but that didn't happen. A lot of my big items didn't sell. A lot of the $8 and $10 items were what sold. Some of the like under $20, but like I sold the Stitch Boba and I sold the Chopper, but I didn't sell my Kakashi. I didn't sell the Sailor Moon Hello Kitty. The Sailor Moon was an art trade. And I think that, oh, and the Capybara and a Snorlax outfit was the only Pokemon themed thing that didn't sell. So yeah, the big items did not do well here, except for the Chopper. So I know next year to focus more on smaller things and probably more Pokemon, because I sold a lot of those. But that was how my market went, and I hope to see you on the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for supporting my small business. I've grown a lot since I've started my business, and YouTube is a way of me trying to continue to grow my business. So if you're watching because you purchased from me at an event, thank you. If you're watching because you purchased from me online, thank you. And if you're watching because you follow me on Instagram, I'm glad you're here, thank you. And if you're just watching because you randomly found me and you stuck around to watch this whole video, thank you. All of your guys' support means a lot to me. So thanks, and thank you for helping me grow my small business. You mean a lot to me, and the world is a better place with you in it. So, bye!